All right, we have the 2020 Fall Major, and the Fall Major here is going to be at Parc de Paris. And as far as holes, if you use Golf Clash Notebook, it's literally holes 1 through 9 in that order. Like, wow, like what the heck's going on? Let's go check them out. Parc de Paris. All right, hole number 1, this par 4. We have lots of options that we can do here. Let's talk about our easy options. Easy options, lay up right here. I'm pretty sure it was wood from out here. And it's a really tight area to come in on the green because you're coming in at this angle right here and it's super tight. This is downhill. There is a rough bump that you can do up here at the top and try and bring it in. But it's kind of a difficult area to come into. So you got to make sure you bring the right secondary clubs. If you've got lower developed stuff, maybe something with some backspin, but you'll have to take this shot a few times and see what works with your clubs. But it is kind of tricky to get in, even though it's easy to lay up over here. And it is kind of tricky to get in. The other way to do it is to do bounce number 1, depending on your clubs. Bounce number 2 is going to be in the rough, and then you're going to bleed out somewhere into this range out here. This shadow is pretty popular. You may, depending on your clubs, be able to get a bounce here and get all the way over and run up to the top. Then you take the risk because you've got to lengthen out your bounces with topspin in order to clear this. And you may end up putting too much topspin on. You may end up bleeding out. From this area, you definitely have a better shot because you can come in. You're not coming in with as much speed, so you can land in this area here and kind of run it to the cup. I see a lot of people, that middle shot is pretty popular with a lot of players. The other way that you can go, and this way right here, depending on your clubs, may be really wind dependent. What club and what ball you're going to bring up. Whereas this spot right here, it doesn't really matter. A lot of times you're going to have to, depending on the club that you bring out, you may, if you've got an accurate club, bounce from here over and then run it up. Or you could start off on this side if you're bringing a bigger club like an extra mile. But this way right here will work in any kind of wind conditions. This way right here might be a little bit tricky because you've got to get that rough bump to bleed out. The other way, and this way is definitely going to be ball and or wind specific, is to come over onto this pad and try and bring it around and get on in one. Now ideally that's the preferred method. It is possible to get into a little bit of trouble here in these trees or overhit and get caught up behind these trees where you have a very difficult time to get on. But most of the, if you epic fail areas are not a big deal. You can just chip it up there, but you can get on the green right up at the pin. You can get around in the back. You can lay it up here. There's different areas up here. There's this tree right here. Might be these two trees, but I think it's this tree and this tree. The line that goes through there, that's pretty much where my ball guide's going, and it does carry a little bit farther down into this. So if you've got any kind of tailwind, it's going to carry a little bit farther, but if you have any kind of headwind, it's going to kill it even harder. So this is going to be extremely ball specific. If we have a tailwind, it is possible to catch that with a power 3 ball. It carries so much out in there that if we have a tailwind and you bring out a really big ball, you could actually overshoot to the other side. This is the preferred way because obviously we can get on in one, but we'll have to play it with what the wind conditions are. If we're getting a big headwind, I may not be able to do the shot on the left, and I may switch to the shot in the middle and see what it looks like. If it's still not working out in the shot in the middle, then I will just lay it up over here and then come in. But we want to make sure that we've got clubs in our bags for all that. If we're taking this, we're probably in short iron, maybe in long iron, depending on where you end up. Out here, it definitely looks like you're probably in wood. Maybe. In this case, if I was hitting over here, I'd probably want to take, especially if I had lower stuff like a Saturn, Guardian, something where if you need to get over to the other side, but if you decide that you want to do that rough bump, especially with the Saturn, you might still be able to get it done. That's hole number 1. We got lots of options on hole number 1, and it really just depends on which way the wind's blowing. Our preferred way to go is this way right here. Anything else is a consolation, but we're hoping the wind goes that way. And I'm sure at least one round the wind will be going this way, but we can't count on that with this varying wind. It may just be just a matter of switching out balls and we can still stay in that spot. Now, I'll tell you, in the past, okay, here's the problem with varying winds here. There's a good little landing spot right here that puts you're just a couple rings off of this transitional area trying to bleed up at it. It doesn't take a lot of maneuver. And so if the wind's blowing this way or blowing this way or blowing this way, you can pull that out into the fairway and you're fine. But if the wind's blowing this way or this way or this way and you've got to adjust over the sand, two things are going to be important. Number one, a super accurate club so your rings are really small. And number two, probably a low wind ball to try and keep it so that we don't have to pull into the sand to make our adjustment. Now there is a rough bump that you can do right here, and we're really going to want to know what our numbers are in that rough bump, because it's kind of the same thing. If the wind's only in the opposite, if the wind's blowing this way, we can pull out over the fairway. If the wind's blowing this way, we're going to have to pull out over the sand, so we could end up being in the same boat. I have tried doing the backspin shot before, where you start off right here with a Saturn or a Grim Reaper and just try and stick it on the green and get my birdie and move on. And it is super dangerous up here, because if you hit anything at all to the right, because there's a ridge running right here, so when you're coming at it and going in this area and you put side spin on it, you've got to get on the other side of that ridge. And if you hit anything to the right, when it lands to the right here, it's going to come up and it'll hit on this side of the ridge, and anything that hits over here ends up going into the sand. I think the last time we had this hole in a tournament, leading up to the weekend round, 50% of the people who played this hole ended up with a par. 50% of the people end up, well, and I take that back. They didn't necessarily end up with a par. They ended up on their drive in the sand or in the rough. And the sand was this sand and this sand right here. And this sand right here, it was like right in the area where they were trying to bounce it over, right in this area. And in the sand here, it was just all over. So this is a hole that can eat your lunch. It's possible to get a hole in one here, and there is a line, like I said, from over in this area right here that you can get a really good run at it. So depending on which way the wind's blowing. I like the rough bump that's here. I was playing a friend of mine here 3 or 4 months ago, Hammering Hank, and that was the shot that he was taking on this hole, and I liked that shot. It came in. You really got to make a great wind adjustment. And and we'll have to see what our elevation stuff is on this hole as we get into the week. But I'm gonna explore that rough bump and see what that looks like this week, because it really did look pretty good. Hole number 3, and I love this hole. Now, in my mind, this is a great Albie hole, and here's the deal. We want to get. Here's our goal. What's our end goal? Our end goal is to get an Albie. So our best shot to get an Albie. This green, let's start at the end and work our way back towards the tee box. This green is sloped like this. And the flagpole is kind of like right in this area right here. So this side, if you draw a line here, and it's actually more probably in this line, everything on this side is this slope. And everything on this side is relatively flat. Not perfectly flat, but relatively flat. And there's a trough that runs up to the cup that runs right along this area where the steep is coming down. If you can get on your second shot, you have a window where you can start your shot off on this side right here. You can stay low way down here at the bottom and ride that trough right to the cup and keep your shot relatively straight. The more you move to the left, the more you involve this hill, and this is one of those types of hills in Golf Clash where it starts off on the hill and then it drops off like this. And so now you got to have your speed absolutely perfect. You got to make a great wind adjustment. You got to have your speed absolutely perfect, and what's going to happen is as it goes down that hill, it's going to fall because gravity is going to pull it down that hill because everything's sloping to the right, and it'll pull it off trajectory. It's not that you can't get an Albie coming from this direction. It's just that it's really, really, really hard. If you can land over here, you can get a straight line to the cup, and you're not involving this hill. This hill's not out of the equation. You still got a little teeny bit, but it's not near what you'd have up here. So in order to get to this spot, all it takes is a kingmaker or a titan, the king of balls, either one of those. 3 Powerball will work fine. And where you're trying to get to is, if you see the lamp post right here, this lamp post is casting this shadow right here. And you want to get somewhere between these 2 shadows. If you're in this shadow, even better. I mean, you don't need to get all the way up here. I see a lot of people where they will get into this area, and you can recover from here. You can get a bounce off of here and then bounce over. Use that hill that I was talking about and then run up to the cup. But your ideal area is somewhere past this shadow, even if it's in between, but really kind of like right on the edge of this shadow right here is kind of a perfect area that gives you that window, so you got a max club shot. You can bring a sniper. Now drive, what do we do to get out into that spot? We have several options here. One of the things that what I see a lot of people do, especially in rookie, is they come out here with their extra mile. And what they're trying to do is, your extra mile red line is like right here. Like right in this area. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying with overpower to get their landing spot so that it's in the middle here, and they do a max overpower shot. And if you look at this course or this fairway, all the fairway that's here, the narrowest piece of fairway in the whole freaking area is right here, and you're doing your drive shot with max overpower, trying to hit this little area, trying to get up. And if it works out for you, the worst thing that can happen is you'll bleed off in the rough here, and you can recover if you have Nirvana. But if it doesn't work out for you and you get caught up down here, you're sunk. Yeah, I mean, your eagle's in jeopardy, because it's going to take you 3 shots just to get on. Hold on. All right, sorry about that. Had to deal with Buster. Let's talk about this drive. So I don't know why people do the max overpower here. If you bring a power 3 ball, and you can do this with an extra mile 6, but you have to hit. What I do is, here's where my red line's at, and I pinch up. If you're using a power 3 ball, you can bounce it over here with a big topper and try and run through this. But once again, you're going through your second bounces in this area right here. So if you're off trajectory on your first bounce, you're going to be off trajectory on your second bounce. So I really like to hit from the other side. And with your red line in this area right here, what I do is I pinch up if we have headwind. So with the varying winds, it's going to change here a little bit. But if we've, or excuse me, not headwind, but tailwind. If we've got tailwind, the tailwind's going to push us out into the course. So I will normally pinch myself up where my red line meets this transitional area. And without using any overpower, let the wind just push me into the center of this fairway with max curl, max topspin, and whatever side spin I can get on there, just to bring me out. I'm not trying to get way up here. All I'm trying to do is get right there, because that gives me that window to get over to this side right here to come to the cup. Now, if we've got headwind here, we may have to switch to, like, the most obvious choice here would be to switch to a bigger power ball, because then we can move our red line forward and we can pull back a little in our setup, adjust for the shot, take the wind out, and achieve the same results. We may be a little bit shorter, a little bit farther, we may have a little bit of fluctuation out here, but as long as we're in front of this shadow, we've got a window. And if we bring out a bigger power ball, because we've got to fight against the wind, it's going to help us even more out here where we're going to be there. We may actually get to a spot where in our second shot coming in, we may be in mid club instead of max club. So we'll have to play the drive shot according to the wind that we're getting. But our goal, regardless of drive shot, is to get out into this area. Now, if we're going against a headwind, a power 4 ball might not be a bad idea, because if we can get out to this area, you really do have just a very small window where you can get onto that fairway. And so if we've got any kind of headwind, we may not be able to work the wind out. So if we had a power 4 ball, our red line's going to be up here, and now that gives us a little bit of room to work the wind out. So I think the way that I'm going to play this is, if I have any kind of forward moving wind, I'm going to bring a power 4 ball, and if I have any kind of tailwind, I'm going to bring a power 3 ball. That's how I'm going to play it. And you can do this with an extra mile or an Apocalypse. I think the extra mile, actually, if you've got an extra mile 8 or 9, the extra mile 9 with the extra topspin that you have really helps, because it can get you first bounce out here, second bounce, a longer second bounce to try and clear all of this rough area. Hole number 4. What is hole number 4? This par 3 right here. Trying to remember this par 3. There is a rough bump on this par 3 as well. I've tried coming at this hole in several different ways. I've tried coming up here with the Guardian and just backspinning in. I see a lot of people coming back over in this area, but look at all these moguls. Look at all the movement that's over here. So that means the course is doing this. And so if you hit in one spot, you're fine. You hit in another spot, you hit it great. You hit it great to the left or the right, or you didn't adjust for the wind right and it hits it up here instead of right here, or if it hits it back here instead of right here, or it can really seriously affect the trajectory of your ball trying to start off in this area. So in the past, what I've done is I've come here and I'm like, screw this area. If I bring a Guardian, I can bring a Guardian and start up here or on the green and just go for it. Now, whenever you're doing a big backspin shot, I will be the first to admit that your chances of hole-in-one are diminished on most holes. Typically, if you can just very little maneuver, just run it up to the cup, that's the best way to try and get a hole-in-one. But going through this stuff right here is not very good. But what you can do is the best of both worlds, is there is a rough bump right here. But this rough bump, like the earlier hole with varying winds, is going to be tricky. Now, sometimes these sand traps, when you're pulling from that rough area into the sand, there's no distortion of the rings. Like when you look over here at how steep this side looks, if you were pulling from here into the sand, your rings are probably going to go like this, and then you got like this, and then you're in the sand, and then it's going to extend it out, and it's going to warp those rings out. This sand over here, I think, is a little flatter, where if we do have to adjust over the sand, it may not be a big issue, but we're going to have to make a super good wind adjustment, because this is a fairly narrow rough patch if we want to use this rough. But I'm going to work on this rough shot all week, because I really do think consistency-wise, that's probably the best way to go out. Now, if I have one epic fail on this, or if I feel like with the varying winds that it's too hard to catch up, because if we have headwind, we've got to do a much bigger adjustment, and if I can't catch up, I'm just going to backspin it to the cup. But I'm going to start off trying to do the rough bump. We'll see how that rolls as the week goes on. All right. Now, let's talk about this hole. There's 2 ways that you can come at it. Let's talk about coming out to this area. If you draw a line from the flag to this tree, you got to get on that side of that. You got to get over here. So that means you've got to end up in this zone. So you need to be somewhere in this zone right here, preferably on the fairway, in front of that shadow. Pretty much if you're in front of that shadow, you've cleared the tree. And you can do a bounce over, you can land on the green. There's probably a rough bump here, but what I don't like about this side is there's a trough. Here's the flagpole. This is all going downhill. This is all going downhill. And you're going right through this little trough right here in the middle. And when you're coming in at it from this side, you're coming down this hill kind of at a side hill, and there's a pocket right here. So there's there's the brown stuff amount of movement on the ball coming into the cup from this direction. So I've never really been a fan of coming out here. There is a spot right here that you can hit to, where you can literally just flow through that trough. And it seems to me I set up a playlist for all of the Park to Paris holes, and I think on this hole right here, I'm starting off. It kind of takes an irregular bounce to the right, about a half a cup. So I started off on the left-hand edge of the cup. I think I was still inside the cup, but like right on the left-hand edge. And what I did here was I brought out an extra mile, and I started off on this side. You can start off on this side and float it over and run it up. This hole tends to, when it gets down into this area right here, I think the course is going like this, and then it's got all these little moguls in it. And it tends to, when it gets down towards this area, especially if you catch a flight where your ball path hits one of those moguls like this, because instead of bouncing, it'll slide across that surface, and then it'll just start to slide, and it's very easy to end up overshooting here and ending up in the sand. And it's like super easy. So we want to make sure we do not get in the sand. But these little indentations that are right here, those are the target zones that we're looking for. Either one of those is good. The front one is a little bit better as far as angle. And when I say front one, I think this one right here is a little bit better. You don't have to get all the way up in there. From this spot right here, your shot to the cup is you've got a really good look. You're going right through that trough. If you start getting too much farther out when you come through the trough, you're actually coming out, especially at the very beginning, you're coming in at a little bit more of an angle. So it doesn't take everything that we have to get out here. I'm not sure. Let's think. I didn't write down any notes for these holes yet, I don't think. Hold on, let me see. Hole number 4. This is hole number 5, 1.5 backspin, left edge of cup, Hornet, Kingmaker. So I wrote down an extra mile Kingmaker, 1.5 backspin with the extra mile. I want to start off on the left-hand edge of the cup, and I'm using a Hornet. I can't remember where I was in my club, whether it was max or if it was mid, but somewhere in that neighborhood. But there is a very nice area out here that you can get on. Very nice. And that is how I will be playing this hole all week. And we have a bunch of choices on this hole too. If you've got lower developed clubs here, this is a great hole for a Guardian on the second shot. I've been like, so first shot, and this is one of those shots where depending on which way the wind's going, there is the way that the wind impacts your ball here. Depending on which way the wind's going, I'm going to do a plus 10%. And I want to make sure I give myself plenty of room out here, and I don't want to be, and I'm trying to go, if you've got lower developed clubs, your second bounce is going to literally be like right here in the middle of that. So anything great to the left or the right, and bam, you're in the sand. And so the wind adjustment's going to need to be really good. So there was one time when we came here, and I believe we had a wind that was blowing like in this direction, and we were adding on 10%. But it seemed like the next time we came here, we had a wind that was blowing like in this direction, and I was doing the 10%, and it was actually pulling me over. So I think we're going to have to make an adjustment depending on how the wind's going. Just be cognizant of it. If you've got upper developed clubs, you can get your second bounce so that it's beyond this and it's not a big concern. So you have to make a commitment when you're playing this hole on which side you're going to go. Are you going to come into the cup on the right-hand side, or are you going to come into the cup on the left-hand side? So if you're going to come into the cup on the right-hand side, you're going to come in over here. You really don't need to get all the way out to the tip. Really, right here by the shadow is fine. Anywhere in this area, you'll tend to be like up more towards in this area. The thing is if you're over here, now you're having to bring it around the trees even more, and you're still having to, you don't have a straight-in shot here. You're going to have to bring it around these trees. But if you have a Guardian, and you're using a power 3 ball, you can start off from right here, and you can get your second bounce to be on this side, and you can do you can do a max backspin side spin curl shot. And even if you don't have any ball guide, if you've got a lower developed Guardian that has like 1.2, or it has 0, it has very little ball guide, you can still do the shot as long as you're starting off on the green. All you're concerned about with your ball guide doing a backspin shot is where is your second bounce landing. Because you know if you're doing max backspin on a shot like that, that it's not going to be very far after that second bounce, and this ball is going to be rolling back in this direction. And so you can start off low on the green down here. Your ball guide's going from here, it's going off in this direction. You start off low on the green, you put max backspin, however much side spin you can get on, max curl, and the ball will come in on this trajectory, hit that backboard, and you'll have and it rolls close to the cup, and it's always close, and you're always like, yo, and it's close, but it very seldom ever goes in. But it's a super easy way to get an eagle. So like if you're on this hole and you've got lower developed clubs, this is 100% pure eagle all day, twice on Sundays. All you have to do is achieve on your drive somewhere right there. If you can get past that up in this area, it's even better. If you've got a power 3 ball and a Guardian, you can get your second shot to this point right here, and you can run it up. Now you can do the bounce over from here with a club like a Sniper that's got more ball guide so you can see where it's going. But if you're this far back, you're more than likely going to still have to use the backboard and try to run it back down to the cup. If you want to play on the left-hand side, then you want to hit it as far out there as you can possibly hit it. And we have some choices here. Seems like we have 3 choices here. There is a rough bump that you can do where you're going in between the trees, and I've tried that several times, and I am not into that at all. There is a rough bump that you can do on this side of the tree, on the left-hand side of the tree, and that's the rough bump that I'm going to be trying. You can also bounce it off the fairway here, but it's impossible. It's actually, if you're trying to hit the fairway here, in my opinion, you're better off to just bring your Guardian and hit right here and do this. Number one, I think you've got just as good a chance of getting it in if you're trying to use the fairway here or versus the fairway here. You have just as good a chance of getting it in here. And this way right here is almost a guarantee. It's like literally a guaranteed birdie. Whereas over here, you've got all kinds of stuff that can get you in serious trouble. But I'm gonna work on this rough bump that's right here on the tip all week, and try and stay low to the cup and try and bring it in that way. If I don't like it, or if I feel like with the varying winds I'm having any kind of issues adjusting the wind out, I can always go back to the Guardian shot, and the Guardian shot guarantees you minimum score. That was hole number 6. Was that hole number 6? I guess that was hole. And I'm taking on the drive there, you can take a extra mile. I think the last time I was here, I took a rock and I was doing max topspin. You can also do a QB, and a QB probably better because it has more, even though the rock has more forward power. I don't think we're using all of our forward power on the drive, and so the topspin might work out. So I think pretty much any driver you can get to work on that drive. That was hole 6, hole 7. All right, there's a bunch of different ways that we can go on this hole. I've actually forgotten how to do it, but I think it was either with a marlin ball, and it might have been with a marlin ball. You can do a max overpower hook shot where you're aiming towards, if you got an extra mile, you're aiming towards those trees. And you're using, I think, that back tree, and what you're trying to do is catch your bounce right here when you come through, so that it'll bring you through, and you'll just bleed through. And you can do a max overpower hook shot on this. You can bring out a bigger power ball, and you could probably do it with a 3 power ball, depending on which way the wind's blowing. Let me get this squared away here. You can come into this area right here, trying to bounce it over to get it to bleed out and end up right out here in front. So we can do a max overpower hook shot trying to get us somewhere into this range. We can start off from right here, depending on which way the wind's blowing. If we've got any kind of forward moving wind, it's going to help us out. We can probably get away with a power 3 ball. But if we have any forward moving wind, we may have to, depending on your clubs, you may have to bring out a power 4 or a power 5 ball. There is also a layup shot that you can do right here, and you've got a straight in shot to the cup, but you want to stay pretty close on this edge over here. You don't want to be out here by the sand, because then your angle coming in, the trees are in the way, and you'll have to bring it around. I see a lot of people do this shot right here. I see some people try and get right into this area, and I'm not exactly sure. I don't want anything to do with behind those trees. Okay, you got lots of options here. A max overpower hook to put you out in the clear. Short, mid-short, or minimum short iron, or maximum wedge. That's where you're looking for to get out here. This angle right here, you're in long iron. There is another way with a power 5 ball in rookie. And you can start off on this side. So this is APOC or extra mile. Now, the last time we had this hole in a tournament, I was using my extra mile, because at that point I think I still had like an APOC 2. And let me see if I wrote down how much. Max curl, max over. I was only putting on, with my extra mile coming over into this area, I was only putting on about 1 topspin. And so what happened to me, I was trying to dial the topspin in so that I could get a good bounce here. So I get 1 bounce here, second bounce all the way on the other side of this, and then dribbling off towards the cup. Now, the first time I tried this, which was a couple tournaments ago, and I didn't actually switch to this shot until the weekend round. This shot right here, where you're bouncing over, getting into this area, ticked me off. This shot right here, I got that shot every time, and it was like, for some reason, I could not get it to drop. It would not go in the hole. And it's like, I'm getting out here in the perfect spot, and I've got this shot, and I can't get it to get in the hole. Then hell with it. I'm just going to try and get on. And made that decision in the weekend round. And the first time I ended up clipping right here, and the second time I ended up right out in front, and it was great. Nice little shot from right out there. And then the last tournament that we played it in, I did this shot exclusively. And I got up here on the backside of the screen. So the screen's slope like this, and here's the pin. And this is a super steep hill rolling down. And I was like right here on the green, like literally right back there in the back of the green, and could not get to the cup because the hill's rolling so fast coming down to the cup that from where I was at out here, if I aimed towards the cup, it was aimed right here. So in order to get there, I had to do this little loopy thing to get over there, and I had to put so much on it just to get it to the hole. By the time I got it to the hole, the tail was out all the way down into here. So it was one of those things where I hit the shot perfect, but it bounced over the cup. And I had that happen to me twice. So if you're up here high on this green, it's really, really bad. Really bad, even halfway. Like if you're on the green and you're not on the lower half of the green, you're having to contend with that hill, and it can be a super, super tough shot that's very likely that you're going to miss, even though you're that close. So for me, the whole goal is I don't want to get on the green. I want to get right here in front of the green. And I think the last time we played this, I ended up like right in this spot right here, and I did about 1.5 topspin, and I dropped it down on my notes for the next tournament to a 1 topspin. So I'm going to try that out, but I'm going to switch. I was doing this with an extra mile, and I'm going to switch, and I was doing it with a 5 power ball. So you can do this with a 3 power ball, but you had to use max overpower. And it's a pretty tight little window down here. So if you bring a 5 power ball, you don't have to do any overpower at all. And I was using an extra mile, but I'm going to use my APOC 5 now because it has more rod distance. So it'll give me a little bit more right here. And I don't need a lot of topspin. I just want to get over to the other side, and I literally just want to lay up right here in front. But we have a lot of different options on this hole. This hole right here is not, I've seen a lot of, I'm going to have to go, we'll go through when we get done here and kind of assess the holes. But this hole right here, while this is not you have to get an eagle, if you want to be at the top of the charts, this is a hole that you pretty much have to get an eagle on. I mean, there are several holes that I've seen so far that we need to work really, really hard to pick up that shot. And this right here is probably the lowest hanging fruit that I've seen so far. And it's still, you still have to work to get that eagle, but this is a hole that we really, really want to pick up the eagle every single time we come to it. All right, I like this par 3. Now, there are some people that don't like it, and I'll see, when this hole first came out, a lot of people were playing it more where they were starting off on this side and then coming up to it. I like to play dead center in the middle and have to bring it a little bit back to the cup. So I'm going to use a Grizzly and a Quasar. I'm bringing the Quasar because I need the Quasar because of the side spin. It takes 4 backspin, 4 right-hand side spin, and I'm going to do a 30% wind adjustment. And I'm going to do a 30% wind adjustment as my base. But if we've got a headwind here, I may raise that 30 to 40 and do a bigger wind adjustment. We'll see how that goes. But I know that in the past here we've had tailwind type stuff, and I've used the 30% wind adjustment, and I have gotten quite a few hole-in-ones on this hole. It's not one of those really high percentage ones, but I have picked up a lot of hole-in-ones, and I'm always like super close, right in that neighborhood. So I'm going to stick with my 30 that I've used for years, and even in one-on-one. But if I have a headwind here, I may rethink that 30, and I may bump it up a little. All right, hole number 9. All right, we got another awesome hole here. Hold on one second. All right, sorry about that. Oh, okay. We have a bunch of options here. We have a bunch of stuff to talk about on this hole. So wind is going to be a big factor here, but if you're playing in rookie, we do have a bunch of options. So let's talk option number one. I see a lot of people do this shot. And what they're doing is they're trying to lay it up out here as far as they can to the tip. They're bringing an extra mile, or they're bringing a big dog. I'm not sure what ball you should bring if you're coming out here. I mean, in my opinion, for the shot that they're trying to do, the bigger the ball that you have, the better. So if you can bring out a power 5 ball, bring out a power 5 ball. Because what they're trying to do, or what you're trying to do, is reach to the point where you can get through. There is a little bit of a lane through these trees. And trying to do a rough bump, a max, in most cases, this is a max OP shot. Trying to do a max overpower shot, hit it perfect, hit that rough, and bleed out right here in front so that you've got a chip on for eagle. You're on in 2, putting for eagle, or chipping for eagle. And depending on where you got out there, you may have some limited look at an albie, but it's pretty grim. I see a lot of people epic fail on this where they end up, they clip the rough right here and they bled forward, so they lost a lot of distance. And they can still get up into this area right here on a max overpower shot. But they're way back, they're not going to be able to bleed through, but they go for it anyways, they try it. But what always gets me when I see people do that is if we draw our arc for our club, so like if you went over to this side, this distance from here to here is the same from here to here, right? So I mean, wherever that's at. They've got fairway over here. So I never can figure out when somebody does end up short down here and they still try and go for it, why aren't they picking up this fairway right here and trying to bring it around this way? So they're trying to do this shot. And the reason is that for a lot of them is when they point towards that, they're in those trees. But those trees aren't in play, because once you put the curl on it to bring it around, you could lay it up out here in front. Now, you may be mid-wedge if you're out here, but mid-wedge is much better than being in the rough. So if you do try this shot over here and you end up being back, don't forget that you have fairway over here as well. And you try and catch that. Like if you're just short up here, you're not going to make it. Pull it over and see where you can catch the fairway right here, because you could do several things. You could do a max overpower hook shot right here with your big dog, or you could just do a max curl shot. So you have some options from that point. The other way you can go at it, I see people that'll come out here and they will try and lay up. And you're relegating yourself here if you lay up to the top. That's shot 1. Shot 2 is going to get you out somewhere in this, somewhere out here. That's shot 2, and then you've got shot 3 to get on. So what you're doing is you're shooting for birdie. You're shooting to try and pick up that eagle, but you're on the birdie track. We really want to be on the eagle track on this hole. This is a tough hole to get an eagle, but it's possible. It's possible. I mean, it can be eagled. It can be albied. We really want to get over to the other side over here. So this really depends on your recovery clubs. So if you have a Nirvana in your bag, you can come out here with an extra mile and hit on this, or an Apocalypse. Apocalypse would probably work better because it's got more curl. And just pound it over to the other side. Now, if you're with an extra mile and you put on all the top spin and you put on all the side spin and you have all the curl, I've ended up out in this area right here so many times that I can't count them. And that puts me like right in this area right here with my red line, but with top spin I can bleed down. Puts me either right off or on the green, right there in that area. You can chip it up for eagle, and it's not that bad. So in my mind, hitting and ending up in the rough out here, if you've got the right recovery club, is not that big of a deal. If you brought an Apocalypse on this shot right here, which I haven't had in the past, it could be a big deal. You can use a big topper on this hole. I actually use a big topper on this hole, and I like to do a max overpower hook shot. And there's a spot down here, and it'll take me one time of playing it, and I'll go back and watch the video that I set up. But I believe, and you'll have to go back in the playlist that I set up for the 2020 Fall Major on hole number 9, and I demo the shot in there. But you can get, I believe, your white ring is, this water is waving. So right now it's at low tide, and when it waves up to high tide, it gets up to the point where the grass is almost covered and you can barely see the sand. I put my white ring on low tide, where my white ring is just up against all of my entire ring set is in the water, and the edge of my ring set is right where the low tide mark was. Just out the wind, doing a max overpower hook shot with a big topper, max top spin, however much side spin you can get on. I was using a Kingmaker, getting my first bounce to go right here, getting my second bounce in this area right here, and just running forward. And from that spot, you can end up here, and you have a long iron in for a serious Albie shot. Super serious. But I think we can get a very similar result from the top with an Apocalypse. Now, if you look at the angles, this is the angle deal. Here's the tee box. We're trying to hit in this direction. And we're trying to cover this swing. So, here's a 90. We're at that 45 mark. If we can get our second bounce to land on the fairway, there's a good chance that we'll continue on that. There's a good chance that we could, if we've got curl on it, we may be able to eke our way along the top. I think if you came out here with an Apocalypse and you started off a little, as this mound right here goes like this, it mounds off and then it rolls and it does this little dome thing, but there is a flat area on the top. You don't want to get involved with these flat areas because it will seriously change your ball trajectory, especially in the front. If you overshoot it and you hit on the downhill side, it'll throw your ball so on a flat trajectory and it'll literally just like leap over to the other side and you'll clip this rough in the front. I've had that go epically bad before, but it's getting over as far as you can, but still making sure that your ball sets on the flat area. And just trying a max from this spot, trying to do a max curl shot to kind of cover this area. It might be possible with an Apocalypse and a Kingmaker, or even a 4 side spin ball. That open ball comes to mind. It's a 4 power ball. It'll make sure that we got good range right here. It's a 4 side spin ball. And if we put on max curl with an Apocalypse, we may be able to get over into this area without having to do the max overpower hook. The problem with the max overpower hooks is that this varying winds is going to cause problems with max overpower hook shots, where there's times where we can get it done and there's times where that shot's not viable. But we could come out here on this particular shot and we could work out the wind, because I don't think that we're all the way up. If we brought a power 4 ball, we're not so far forward that we're up against our red line. We're setting the shot up where we want here based off of where our bounces are at. We have a lot of options on this hole, but the whole deal is that I'm going for this spot right here on the first shot, because I want to give myself an Albie shot on this hole. Most people come to this hole and they're like, man, this is a tough hole to get an eagle on, and I want to come to this hole and be up here in the front looking at a long iron Albie shot, and if I don't make it, then I can put it in for eagle and move on down the road. All right, that was hole number 9. Well, let's go through these holes real quick. So let's start at 1. Let's think minimum score. It's par 4, and that's minimum score 1. And that's par 3. The minimum score is birdie. Par 5, minimum score is eagle. We should be able to easily get an eagle on this. We got a great Albie opportunity. Minimum score is birdie. Minimum score, par 4. This right here is some pretty low-hanging fruit. This is a hole that we want to mark. We want to put some asterisks by, because this is a hole. This isn't, I don't think, the lowest hanging piece of fruit on the field, but it's pretty dang low. But it is still just a birdie hole. This par 5. This par 5 right here is still an eagle hole, and we do have an Albie shot on it. This one right here, it's not. It really is a birdie hole. But this is the lowest hanging fruit out here. These 2 par 4s, these last 2 par 4s, these are par 4s that we really, really, really want to pick up every time. Even if that was the only thing we got, that's going to be huge for our rounds. just those 2 holes. I like this par 3. I think for my game of the par 3s, this is probably the best shot I have at a hole-in-one as it stands right now. I say that sometimes and then I have one hole that it's like, man, I don't really like that hole, and by the end of the week, that's my favorite hole. But this is once again just a birdie hole. And this right here it's borderlining on a birdie hole with an eagle opportunity. But I think that there's enough different ways to get over there. And a lot of it, if you don't have really, really good clubs, is all ball selection. And I know that there's a lot of people that are out there that are like, yeah, but I don't have those balls. That's not my problem. That's not your problem. You know, and you're talking to somebody and they go, yeah, but you got Power 5 balls. That's not my problem that you don't have Power 5 balls. I don't have some Power 5 balls in my practice account. That's not your guys' problem. That's my problem. Okay? If I wanted Power 5 balls and I wanted to do the thing, so when people get into the tournaments and they're like, oh, yeah, but yeah, you guys got those big Power 5 balls you bring out. Well, that's not my problem that you didn't buy any of those Power 5 balls. That's how the game works. I don't make the rules. We're just playing. That there is enough equipment out there, either in balls or clubs, and enough different ways to go at this that we should be able to make this. This is going to be one of those holes that I think is going to be an eagle hole. There isn't really an Albie opportunity for the average person, for the majority of the players that are out there, but I think we can make it an eagle hole with an Albie opportunity. But what we really want, I think, for most people is to just make it an eagle hole. There's no chance for Albie, but we got the eagle. But there's going to be a lot of people out there that are going to think that this is a birdie hole with an eagle opportunity, and it's not. We have to get an eagle on this hole. So our minimum score in this tournament, based off of these holes, is going to be a minus 12. And so we're going to work from that point. And we have 2 par 4s. So that's minus 24 in a full round. And we have 2 par 4s that we really, really need to pick up those shots. Just those 2 holes, if we pick them up every side, that's minus 28. So like when I think of what it's going to take in the weekend round to win, there's nothing that involves less than a minus 28 that involves the word win. So I really have to, in my mind, I'm going to have to shoot a 28 or better just to have any shot at like a top 5. And as the week goes on and we look at the other holes and we get a feel for how the other holes are playing, there may be some hole that pops out and is just like, hey, if you don't get, you've got to pick me up. That could change that. But everything on my sheet, I'm going to write down minimum score minus 12, for a round minus 24. But what I'm looking for as my personal minimum is minus 28, because I don't think that anything's going to start less than minus 28. Now, there could be some brackets where it's not like that, but if you're playing against people that are really good, that know how to play, it's going to start at minus 28. All right, that was kind of a walkthrough for the Parc de Paris holes for the 2020 Fall Major. I'm kind of excited. The deal is I played, we just had a 9-hole cup. We just had Gokasha 9-hole cup. And I played throughout the week, and I didn't have time last night to do the final round. I did the final round on my practice account just to get one more round to practice, but I did not have time to play. Like, what in the hell is the deal here? I'm hitting this button. But I'm really kind of excited about playing in the Fall Major, because the Fall Major is the only major that I haven't won. So I really want to add the Fall Major. The Fall Major will give me a lifetime Grand Slam. So I dropped the Summer Major. I won the Spring and the Winter Major this year, and then dropped the Summer Major. Was taking some time off and didn't. I don't even know if I played it. I think I played a qualifying round just to demo some of the holes, but I don't think I even played it. Maybe I did. I didn't do very well, I can tell you that. So we'll see if we can get some stuff going on. I really like these holes. These holes, I think that in varying winds, the cool thing about the varying winds is it will keep down the super crazy stuff. So it'll be hard, like if in the past, if you could, somebody came out here and fired off a 34, they're doing the same exact stuff the next day and the same exact stuff the next day. It's easy to replicate that 34. But with the varying winds, there's going to be fluctuations up there at the top. And our goal is going to be, our minimum goal is going to be to try and pick up 2 shots per side. And then anything else we can pick up is just going to be a bonus. All right. Thanks for watching.